right. Well, I appreciate everybody joining tonight live, and we've made it. We made it to the fifth webinar in this series that I'm hosting, the Building Generational Wealth with Real Estate Investing. And really, my goal this entire time has been to create a foundation to feed bits and pieces of different types of real estate investing vehicles into the presentations with real life examples. And it's been my goal really to culminate through to the end here with how to build a plan, right? How to even build the semblance of a simple plan on paper that includes some real estate investing, and to model it. So, model it with some realism so that you can see what it actually does to your financials over a period of time. I think, obviously, financial planning, setting goals, things like that is probably in everybody's nature here. And it's additionally beneficial when you put some real numbers behind it, because it can add some motivation. It can really get you going, get you excited. And I'm going to try to reserve about 5 to 10 minutes near the end where we will build a 10-year plan, like live, like in real life. Okay. And it'll be generic, high level, so to speak, but that's how we want to do it. Right. We want to start from a high level and build from there. So, as with all the webinars, this is education, based. So I'm not selling anything. I'm not going to ask for money at the end here. Just simply, supplying knowledge based on my experience and my learning. So hopefully it's been very helpful. And here it is, final webinar, 10-year real estate investing plan. And why don't we go ahead and kick it off? I think I can skip this. We've seen this slide. You guys know Emily and I. So I'm gonna do probably 2 or 3 charts here in review. If you've been attending the other webinars, we've seen these charts before, but I really want to spend maybe 5 minutes just rehashing, because you really can't go over this stuff too many times. Fundamentally, from the highest level, the reason that real estate investing works, the reason why so many folks have found success with it, is because it's just it's part of our hierarchy of needs, shelter, just like food is. And where everybody always needs a place to live. Everybody needs a roof over their head. And so that's what drives the investment vehicle. If you're making smart decisions with regards to location, the people that you invest with, the markets, and the type of investment vehicles, we talked a lot about, the different types of apartment complexes and things like that. If you're smart about that, then, it's tough to fail, right? And regardless of what happens in the world, really, it tends to be a relatively safe long-term investment for those reasons. I'm going to review the 3 high-level reasons why Emily and I just continue to invest in real estate, and why we, again, the reasons why. Like, if I had to say why, what our why is, it's, at the end of the day, if you divide how much money you make by the amount of time you put in making it, that tends to be a significant thing that benefits real estate. This is September. Last presentation, I showed August income on passive investments. This is my September passive investment income. That one Plano Squared deal that was $5,600, that pays out quarterly. And so that wasn't necessarily a monthly payout. It pays 4 times a year. That's why it's a little bit higher. But again, it's $6,000 earned in September. And the most work I did here was just wire the money over, right? Besides getting to know the sponsor team and knowing who they are and all that, there's really has been no effort involved here. Reason number 2 is because I firmly believe that it's my responsibility, mine and my wife's responsibility, to ensure that our family has what they need financially. And, it doesn't mean that, that our daughter Riley needs to have some entitled lifestyle and grow up rich child. That's not what it means at all, right? It means she needs to have options, right? She wants to do what she wants with her life, and I'd love to financially support her in that. And I don't want any guesswork there. I want it to be solid, right? And so when I think about generational wealth, I was always taught to invest in stocks, bonds, and mutual funds when I was growing up. And so that's largely what I did for the first, we call it 10 years of, my early professional career. But on the left, when you compare, the S&P 500, say, for example, kind of a set it and forget it investment, to what I've experienced in real estate on the right, it's just drastically different, right? And I know that I can build multi-generational wealth on the right-hand side, whereas on the left-hand side, I can't do that. And then reason number 3, again, why real estate investing just continues to be our primary focus is just complete control over our own lives and the lifestyle that we live. It happens to be, real estate investing happens to be my full-time job. It by no means, do I consider it one, right? It's more of a lifestyle thing. And the more and more we get into it, the more I discover that I am more and more in control of what happens, right? 100% in control, regardless of the market movement, regardless of what's going on in the world, et cetera. You just, as you get deeper and deeper into this, you just realize, hey, I am more and more in control of my financial destiny. And therefore, you're just more in control of your lifestyle. Okay, so with a little bit of review out of the way there, again, it's just I'm very passionate about why we got into this and why we continue to do it. So I want to make sure it's extremely clear, those 3 reasons. But let's really dive into the meat and potatoes of the plan. And when if y'all tuned into my first webinar 4 or 5 weeks ago, I told a little story about the relationship I had with my father growing up, and how, although, he was a 35, 40-year corporate veteran, and he worked to support our family and, didn't do any real estate investing himself. When he sent me off to school, he put together a financial plan for me, and we worked on it together. And part of that plan was a piece of real estate every year. And so using that model, using that experience that I went through, I'm going to essentially lay that out here as a 10-year plan by, putting a piece of real estate in your portfolio every year, so that at the end of 10 years, you've got, somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 to 10 pieces of real estate in your portfolio. And as we dive in, hey, love them or hate them, regardless of your political affiliation, this is something that Bill Gates said that I think rings very true. And if you even look back at your own accomplishments and things you've done in life, I do believe that you can resonate with this. Most people completely overestimate what they can do in 12 months or 1 year, but they underestimate what they can do in 10 years. Okay. So think about what we were all doing 10 years ago. And, did you know, or, could you envision, hey, I'm actually doing something today that I thought I was doing, I would do 10 years ago? And the answer is probably no. It's like, wow, a lot takes place in 10 years. And so when you plan for 10 years, we want to be conservative, right? We want to say, oh, well, I'm just going to plan on, maybe this investment or that investment, or I'm going to get into these things, or have this financial outlook. But I almost guarantee if you go down a path like this, you'll probably be wildly more successful over that time span than what you said you would do on paper. I can almost guarantee it. Want to get a few definitions cleared through here, get some definitions going before we actually talk numbers. Active investing versus passive investing. And these definitions might actually be obvious. You may already know what these are. I want to give a little bit of my commentary on these because they are very distinct roles in real estate investing in particular. And it's worth bearing a little bit of discussion. So in the world of real estate, and I'm sure this translates into other types of investing vehicles, but in the world of real estate, you have an active investor. You have someone who's actually going out and getting deals done. Okay. Maybe it's, HGTV and the people you see on there that actually go out and buy the distressed properties and renovate them and sell them for a big profit. It could be, like we talked about, the apartment investor who goes out and secures a 300 unit apartment community under contract and then raises money from other investors to get the deal done. Okay. So it takes on different forms, but the active investor is the one is actually out there pounding the pavement, making the offers, putting some capital at risk to get the deals done. It's pretty obvious that is a more time intensive role. Okay. How much time is up to you, right? If you want to be an active investor, I have all sorts of ideas and things to talk about there. I've been an active investor for a while, right? And Emily's been doing it a little bit longer than I have. So, it by no means is it necessarily a full-time job. I know plenty of people who do active investing alongside a full-time career, other career, but it does require a little bit more, just a little bit more time, effort, and passion to get it done, right? That kind of thing. The returns are, naturally higher. If you control the deal, if you're the lead person, if you're the lead guy or gal in the deal, you control the financial outcomes of the deal. And so, your returns generally can be higher, right? And we talked a little bit about that during the apartment multifamily webinar. And then we've got the passive investor. And I'll tell you, the picture there on the beach, it really is true. I mean, that is the lifestyle of a passive investor. And there is some responsibilities required, right? Of course, you're putting your hard-earned money into, some real estate investments. And so as a passive investor, you're going to be investing your funds with an active investor. So someone's going to be out doing the deals and then, getting deals under contract, closing on deals, securing real estate. And then as a passive investor, you're going to be confiding in, trusting in, putting your hard-earned money into those deals, right? And so there is a level of responsibility. It's, yes, you sit on the beach, but like I said in a prior slide, the work that is involved is getting to know the folks that you work with. I call it due diligence here, right? You're doing some due diligence on the sponsor or the lead investor, the active investor. And beyond that, I mean, in this business, it is a know, like, and trust business, right? The folks that invest with us, there's a relationship there. Okay. I can't say I've ever had anybody wire me funds as an investor that I had met through a handshake or a business card and hadn't at least build up some type of relationship. So that's a very natural thing, obviously. And it happens to be I'd say the largest amount of work that the passive investor has to do. But once they have accomplished that, they can enjoy, little mailbox money, because their role, their responsibility in most of the real estate deals is very little, not much at all, really. So, to kind of clear the slide, if you're going out and you're going to buy rental property, say, a single family residence and be a landlord, well, that's an active investor. Okay. You're going out, you're making a down payment. Maybe it's a home that you used to live in and you're house hacking and you're going to move and then rent out your old house. That's an active investor. Okay. You control the deal. If a buddy of yours is going to go out and buy a single family home and doesn't have enough money to do it, so he's looking for someone to help him invest, well, then you might be the passive investor, okay? Where your buddy's the active investor, he gets the deal done. Maybe he actually runs the deal and is accountable for the performance, but, didn't have enough money. So he came to you and said, hey, do you want to invest? It takes on all types of forms, but you can see the difference there between the active and the passive investor. I kind of teased this this slide last time, the 4 conditions of money. And as we build on our plan here, this is where we're actually going to set some definition for why we are investing in what we're investing in, why we're building a portfolio in the way that we are, and a very, very typical way to actually execute the plan after you've put it on paper. So we put the plan on paper, but then we actually have to go look and say, okay, well, I know where I'm at today. I know what the current state looks like. How do I, I mapped out what I want to be doing in 5 to 10 years. How do I go do that? Okay. What's the actual roadmap? Like, what's the execution map there? And that's where this slide is just, it really gives a lot of definition and guidance, because any investment can fall in this range, right? In this spectrum. And I put 20% at the top. It might be higher, right? Use whatever you'd like, but you've got dead money. You've got dead money investments where money sits in a checking account, or maybe it's a savings account with a low interest rate, or maybe it's in between your mattress, right? Where it's actually losing money due to inflation. And then we've got safe money, modest returns. I'm calling it 5 to 8%. You could probably do that in the stock market, right? Treasury bills are pretty hot today. You can do treasury bills for 5 to 6% annually. Savings bonds, things of that nature. There's some high yield savings accounts that are doing like 5.5%. And then you've got healthy money. This is where you start to get into more of the, I'll call it real estate investments, right? So notes, we talked about notes last time. So that's where you're going to see some healthy money returns. Hard money lending, if you've never heard that term, that's essentially going out and making a loan to like a house flipper. A lot of home renovators, house flippers don't have a lot of their own money. So they get private loans from other folks. And so you could command 10 to 12% on a loan to somebody. So I'm calling that healthy money. And then wealthy money. Okay. So this is where, the people, real estate investors really start to amplify their wealth, is through these type of investments. And we've talked about them, right? In fact, I highlighted here the ones that we've talked about. We've talked about multifamily apartments, industrial triple net, commercial and warehouse space. Talked about notes. Anything on the slide here that's in green is something that I personally have experience in. I personally have an investment in, the green items. The yellow is what we've talked about in this webinar series. And yeah, I mean, I feel very good about, hey, we need to diversify. We definitely need to put our portfolio in different areas of this spectrum. And on the left, when I went and looked at my own balance sheet, on the left is where all of my assets are sitting. This is where my portfolio sits. I've got 50% of my portfolio in the wealthy range, 30% in the healthy, 20 in the safe. Those percentages, that comes down to personal preference, potentially comes down to how close you are to retirement, things of that nature, right? Yeah. And for example, I've got my father. He recently got into mortgage note investing after he saw what we were doing. And he actually prefers mortgage note investing, even though it sits in the healthy money category. He prefers that over some of the wealthy money category investments, because he loves the cash flow of the notes. And so it just depends, right? You just have to find a mix. You have to find what works for you from a diversification standpoint. And what you're going to find is, a lot of us, when we get started, and I'll touch on this a bit more later, but a lot of us, when we get started, I know this was the case for Emily and I, we have a lot of money in the dead and safe area. Okay. I think a lot of us can relate to that, right? Got a lot of money sitting in the dead and safe. The way to start executing on your plan is to start moving that portfolio up the chain into the healthy and the wealthy, right? Where you can get better and better returns. So that's really the goal of the execution phase of this. Nice little formatting issue there. I will say in the background, what we do have to kind of remember here as we move up the chain. So as we start to take our portfolio, after we lay our plan out and we're happy with what it looks like on paper, and we start to execute and understand how to do that, what we're going to have to realize is as you move up the chain, generally speaking, you're going to get into longer and longer investments, right? So that's key. That's key to understand, because as you lay out your plan, right, if you're going to buy, say, an apartment complex, well, you'll buy that in year 1, and then you're probably going to hold that until year 4 or 5, right? As opposed to if you bought, say, a treasury bill, okay, at 5 or 6% interest, that's going to be generally less than a year. And of course, if you're keeping, say, dead money in a checking account, well, that's liquid, right? So as you move up the chain, it tends to be longer investment time frame. The returns generally go up as you move up the chain, hence the range of returns. And then let's talk a little bit about risk, because, you know, generally speaking, a savvy investor is going to say, hey, I get it, right? As we move up the range, you're going to get into more complex investments, longer investments. I mean, I would argue that a multifamily apartment complex that returns 20% annually is a little bit more complex than a treasury bill that I just have to click a button and buy that on the internet, right? It's very true. But I think we have to have a good discussion here on risk, because a savvy investor might also say, well, as you move up the chain, then your risk goes up as well. Well, that's where I say, hey, quick timeout, right? Because yeah, that, you know, depending on how you approach that might be true. But I can tell you right now, with where I sit, with most of my portfolio sitting up here on the top, today, I feel more in control and safer about my financial future than I ever felt when most of my money was sitting down here in dead and safe. I can say that with absolute certainty. And why is that? Because of all the reasons we talked about, right? Is because I get to control which markets I operate in. When I invest passively with other people, I get to control who those people are, right? I know who they are. I can call them. There's relationships there. And, you know, way more control than, say, in my stock portfolio, where, you know, I don't sit on the board of directors of GE. I have GE stock, but I you know, I don't control what they do. So just something, you know, it's kind of a paradigm shift, right? The opportunity to get better and better investment returns with real assets, where you actually have more control and can mitigate risk. There's a potential for less risk with higher return, if you can think of it that way. It's definitely what I've experienced. All right. Well, we've been building up, and we're going to actually talk about the plan now. And I'd like to kind of split into 2 different tools. And anybody who's taken a business class or an accounting class, you know, maybe we've got some entrepreneurs that are listening. You're going to be familiar with a profit and loss statement and a balance sheet. Okay. And any business has this. If you run a business, I mean, even if you're working a corporate job, and you're working in a manufacturing facility or operations, well, then you're going to understand, hey, the business that you work in has a profit and loss and a balance sheet, right? And so we need to strive, as we build this real estate plan, we're all coming from a different place, right? Financially, we're coming from a different place knowledge-wise. Some of us might already have these for our personal lives, some maybe not. But starting today, if we don't have these, we need to build them, right? We need to have a personal profit and loss budget for our personal lives. We need to have a personal balance sheet for our personal lives, so that we can understand where we stand, where we are at today, okay? On the P&L side, we need to know, hey, here's how much money I make. Here's how much I keep or save. And here's how much I spend, right? Like I said, man, some of us might be really good at this. So I don't want to belabor the point here and start giving a personal accounting 101 and say, hey, let's sit down and budget our lives. Some of you guys probably already do this, but I want to hit home the point that that we need this. This is really a first step. So we need to understand the income and the expense side of our own lives. Once you have this in place, we need to look at this monthly, every 30 days. How did we do? Here's how much I made. Here's how much I spent. What's the bottom line? Oh, I netted $1,000 this month. Sweet. Oh man, I spent too much. I lost 500. Okay. So that you can kind of understand how life works. Another best practice is to take your budget, whatever that you've planned for, and do a checkup at the 6-month point, right? I love doing this, right? June rolls around, you're like, okay, man, the year is flying by, and let's see how we're doing. If I annualize my income and expenses, how's the rest of the year going to look? Do I need to make any adjustments? Right? For me personally, the adjustments are usually on the expense side. Okay. It's like, oh, wow. Didn't realize that. And then finally, we want to every year just plan out the next year. Say, okay, well, here's how it looks. I got a new real estate investment this year. I'm going to make an extra, whatever, $6,000 next year in that real estate investment. So let's plan that out. Yeah, these are things that before you put together a real estate plan, it really, really helps to look in the rearview mirror and understand what history tells you about your income and your expenses, as well as to budget in the future. Because once we put, rubber to the road on the real estate side, yes, you have an opportunity to really amplify your income. Your balance sheet's going to change over time, but your ability to obtain more and more real estate assets over the years will largely depend on how disciplined you are with your P&L, your profit and loss budgeting. Okay. So this is a fundamental. It's easy to do. It's not hard. And you can sit down. The example I put on the right there, I just grabbed that from Google. I mean, boom, you can grab some templates and just put it together. It's pretty easy. The balance sheet, it's hard to say. I look at the balance sheet, I'm like, man, this might be even more important than the profit and loss statement. But at the end of the day, the profit and loss is probably the one that gets put together first so that you can understand where you are, income and expense. But right after you're done with that, it is time to list out everything that you own, everything that belongs to you that's worth something. Okay. Your personal residence, any sort of other real estate that you own, your stock portfolio, the cash sitting between your mattress, all your bank accounts, you name it. And then you draw a line, and on the other side, you list out all the debts that you owe. Okay. Student loans, credit card debt, taxes. I mean, anything that, hey, if you owe something to somebody, well, it belongs on that side, right? A car payment. Yeah. A home mortgage, right? So at the end of this activity, this will give you kind of it'll show you the health of your net worth. Okay. When you take all your assets, add those up, take all your liabilities, and you take your assets minus your liabilities, you'll find out what you're worth, essentially. If you paid off all your debt, if you paid off all your liabilities, and all you had left over was assets, then that's what you're, financially worth. And this is important because it kind of gives us a little picture of where we're at currently. Can we afford to take the move into real estate today? Are there other steps we need to take first? And if we are ready to go today, right? Like if we're ready to start making moves, in the near term, well then, where does the capital come from? Okay. How best to move the chess pieces around on my balance sheet to get in a position where I can start to actually execute on the real estate plan, right? Because if you have to make a down payment on, say, a piece of real estate, well, that's got to come from somewhere, right? Somewhere on the asset side of your balance sheet. So profit and loss, balance sheet, two little report cards, I'll call it, little health report cards that show you where you're at financially. Using these report cards, we can kind of glean a couple comparisons about financial planning and financial execution. I did not come up with these charts. I actually took these charts from a Robert Kiyosaki class I took 10 years ago or so. But it was, for me personally, it was profound, because what it taught me was, you know, if you have income, say a job, right, and you have assets and liabilities, well, then there's different ways that people in this world treat that income. And I put just 3 different examples here, right? You've got all the way to the left, the paycheck to paycheck person. All the way to the right, you've got this super wealthy, rich person, right? And these folks handle their profit and loss or income statement here. They handle the income statement and the balance sheet a little bit differently, right? You've got the paycheck to paycheck folk who, hey, I've got a job, I make a salary, but I've got expenses that are more or less equal to what I make. And so it comes in one side of the bank account and it goes out the other side simultaneously, right? Pretty self-explanatory. You've got the middle class where most of us sit, and, you know, similar to the paycheck to paycheck guy, right? They have the job, they have the salary, the income comes in one side of the bank account, but most of us have a home mortgage, right? Car loans. Some of us have credit card debt, right? School loans, things like that, right? We have liabilities, or, you know, as this illustrates, maybe we have more liabilities than we do assets. And so what does that do? It constrains us to spending, right? And so it's like, hey, I got money coming in the door, but man, my balance sheet's it's out of whack, right? I owe more than I own. I have more liabilities than assets. And so the income goes right out the door again, right? What we want to do through this activity, where we're going to start throwing real estate into our balance sheet, essentially, is we want the side on the right. Okay. We want to have a balance sheet that is disproportionately weighted towards the asset side, where you've got real estate, you've got mortgage notes, you've got property, and that grossly outweighs the liabilities on the right, the mortgage, any sort of loans or credit card debt or things like that. Why? Because look what happens on the right there. The assets, they create the income, right? Instead of having income come in one side of the bank account and then pay for all the liability debt, we've got assets that are generating wealth. They are creating the income, and then boom, that comes into the income statement in the form of rental income, cash flow dividends, interest from any sort of businesses you own, things like that, mortgage note income. Yeah. And so it's a paradigm shift. It's a little bit of a mindset shift away from standard way of, I'll call it, American living, right? It's really the goal of this activity at the end of the day is on this right side of the slide, is to let's amplify the asset side of our balance sheet as much as humanly possible so that it can work for us. Okay. All right. So we're going to dive right in. We're going to do this plan. And so I've got a couple charts where we talk about doing the plan, but really, in all honesty, as I look at the time, I've got a spreadsheet. I'm going to break away from the PowerPoint. I created just a simple spreadsheet, super simple. We're going to work with that live. I'm just going to create the plan live. We're going to mess with it in real time. And I'll just show you, we'll look at the end result, right? It's high level. It should get everybody excited. It's realistic, right? There's no bells and whistles. Nothing's made up. But the goal here, when we sit down and do this, right? And I encourage, even though we're going to do this here tonight, I encourage everybody to do it on their own. The goal is to add a real estate investment to your portfolio every year, one per year. So at the end of 10 years, we've got, I'll say 5 to 10 pieces of real estate in your portfolio. You might not have all 10 because you know, over 10 years, you might sell the first several. But yeah, that's the goal. Every year, add one real estate investment. Simple goal. We're going to apply a rate of return because I want to see, as I add those things to my balance sheet, I want to see how it impacts the bottom line of my net worth. I want to see how keeping my money socked away in real estate investments can positively impact me. To do that, it's more than just moving chess pieces around the balance sheet, right? I'm going to make investments that actually give me a return on investment. So we're going to apply, you know, a simple, I'll call it conservative rate of return, 12%, for example. And then as we go, we will continually focus on how can I tweak my P&L and my budget so that I can afford that real estate every year. I want to have the finish line in view so that every July, I am ready to make that investment. And so we're going to keep a very keen eye on what I make and what I spend and consequently how much I save, because we need to start, you know, creating a little bit of side hustle money for this real estate investment every year. Okay, so one per year. That is the motto for the webinar. One per year. But I tell you what, and this will be cool, because if I follow up, if anybody does, if anybody goes off and does this, and I follow up with you in 10 years, I guarantee, I will bet my next paycheck that there is more than one real estate investment per year in your portfolio. I'm just going to go out and say that. I know that for a fact. Okay. Where does the capital come from? Actually, this is a good point. I'm going to break away. Let's break away from this. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to pull up the spreadsheet, and I want to go through this in real time. So let me share my spreadsheet here. Okay. So this is just a simple model. There is no, I mean, there's a formula in here, folks, but this is not rocket science. I am absolutely willing to share this. I'll email this to whoever. Totally fine. This is not proprietary, but this is a personal balance sheet. Okay. And as you can see, like we talked about, we've got assets, liabilities, and at the bottom, I've got net worth, where the net worth is the assets minus the liabilities. That's how much I'm worth. And I just threw in some stuff here, right? I got $100,000 in cash. I got a personal residence that's worth $450,000. I've got a couple cars, $90,000. Hey, notice this. The vehicles, what do they do over time? They depreciate. So we can get clever. We can get cute in this spreadsheet, right? We can get pretty realistic. Then I've got a home loan for that personal residence. Then I've got just some other stuff. You know, I owe somebody $18,000. I owe somebody else $13,000, right? And I don't really do a good job of paying those off over the years either. But this is just meant to be an illustration. To go along with the balance sheet, I've got my income statement, okay? And I've laid this out by year, but I can tell you this much. The income statement, like I said on a prior slide, should really be reviewed monthly. So on my personal financial spreadsheet, I've got an income statement by year, but I also have it by month because I review it every 30 days. So you need both. And so for this hypothetical American family, I've got a couple W-2 incomes. Here's all my planned real estate. And then here's my annual expenses. So let's see, what do we do here? I've got 168,000 a year in salaries. I've got 105,000 a year in expenses. And hey, this family does pretty good. They save about 60,000 a year. So that's great, right? That's really good, actually. And here's my rate of return. So on the balance sheet, I've just put 12% in for these real estate investments. Nothing fancy. I didn't go off on a limb and say, man, I'm going to do all 20%. I just did 12, right? You can put whatever you'd like in there. And then over here, because my real estate investments create cash flow, we talked about that a couple webinars back, especially during the multifamily. I just basically made a simple assumption that as we make these investments, each of these has a specific amount of cash flow percentage annually. So just simple stuff, nothing too complex. But let's mess around with this. So I actually already started messing around with it. I said in 2023, we're going to make our first real estate investment, 25,000. Okay. And you can see with the rate of return of 12%, let me zoom up on this. With the 12% rate of return, that investment grows over time. And then I just hypothetically said, well, it's going to sell in the 5th year. So it's not a 10-year investment, it's a 5-year investment. And then I did the same thing in 2024. I took, let's say the family, they took some of their $60,000 savings and made a $50,000 investment, right? Okay. And let that grow. And let's go out to 2025 and let's do another 25,000. And we'll just we'll keep all these investments to about 5 years. And we'll just do another 25,000. And we'll just keep building it. Now here's something that's kind of interesting. You ready for this? So let's say the family had another, I don't know, 20,000 to invest in 2027. But look, their first deal sold. Okay. So they're going to take the 20 plus the 40 that they made, or that they recouped from this investment. And they're going to, let's just say they do a $60,000 investment here. And we'll just call that a 5-year investment as well. And check this out. Real estate number 2, the $50,000 investment, it grew to $78,000. So they find another couple thousand, and let's say they made an $80,000 investment. So they recycle their investment, right? Not taking any winnings, no chips off the table yet. And let's see here. Okay, so we got real estate number 3 sells and 40,000. So let's say they maybe had that plus another 10, so $50,000 investment. Okay, let that grow. So you can see how this works, right? Maybe they get another 50 because they had another deal sell. Oh, wow, this one's going to be good. So real estate number 5, after buying for 60, let's say they grew that, all the way up to 94,000. And again, I caution all of us here, this is, you can pick whatever rate of return you're comfortable planning with. I use 12. I mean, my real life experience is much higher than that, right? But we always plan conservatively. So, do what you're comfortable with. But hey, this investment here, it got all the way up to almost $100,000. So let's say family will take some chips off the table, but they'll reinvest 75 maybe. And then maybe the next year is going to be another 75. So you can see how this really starts to get interesting after a while, right? At first you're like, okay, starting off with some investments over the first couple years, but notice the power of the reinvesting strategy too, because, and I'll just highlight these. I'll just highlight these for to illustrate, as these deals sell, you have the opportunity to reinvest, right? And a lot of people do. And so you amplify your portfolio. Someday, you could find yourself potentially making $100,000 real estate investment because you invested 60 4 years prior, right? So, everybody's going to come from a different financial situation as far as these numbers go and what you can invest. But check this out. This is great. Through the power of real estate investing, we've taken this family's net worth, about $300,000 in 2023. And we have, what is this? Pretty healthy, right? We've 3x'd it. We've taken their net worth and we've multiplied it three times over with one real estate investment per year, right? Up on the P&L, kind of following along with our rates of return, each investment brings in a certain amount of cash flow. Now for this family, right, they're investing passively. I kind of modeled this off a passive investing strategy. This wasn't ever designed to replace their corporate salaries or anything like that, but you can see that it's decent, right? 4 or 5 years in, 6 years in, making 30 grand a year. Not bad, right? And so, you could see where this goes. If you have the discipline to lay out the plan, do one per year at a rate and at a amount of capital that you're comfortable with, it really builds on itself, right? And like I said before, everybody's got a different situation, but I was talking to an investor the other day who, his investable funds was really all tied up in a rent house that he owned, a rent house for, I think it was $300,000, right? And he owned it free and clear. And I still said the same thing to him. I said, hey, you could take that 300,000 and you could just do 50 the first year, 50 the second year, 50 the third year, so on and so forth. You don't need to just do 300,000 right away. It's up to everybody's comfort level and things like that. But you can see how that really impacts things. So let me know if you want the sheet. I'll happily send it out, right? I can blank all these numbers out and you can mess around with it as much as you want. To me, it's very fundamental. It's okay. I'm going to plug in one real estate investment per year. Even if I feel like I've got enough capital to do multiple, you just start simple. You start conservatively. Okay. Hey, after you get into it and you do some more research, this might be, this might be a 5-year, but you might be able to execute this in half the time. You just never know. So, but it's a starting point. And I think it just creates a lot of power. Cause look here, instead of reinvesting, the 50,000, see, like in this first real estate investment, they almost 80,000. So you might be able to reinvest more here. This could be 80. Yeah. And you can just kind of see what your reinvestment strategy would look like. Oop. Yeah. Just keeps getting better and better. So yeah, I'd love to send this out. So please shoot me an email or a text or LinkedIn, or if you want this, happy to share it. Let me go back to the presentation because I have a few more very important points that I just want to talk through. So hopefully through the webinar series, we can understand the potential as we put the plan together, and even if it's just one per year, and even it could be 25,000 one year, 25 the next, 25. Through the webinar series, I hope it's become obvious that, the investment vehicles and the realistic returns do exist. I think the next big question that comes up, because, hey, we can do all the research we want about the investment vehicle. We can build relationships with active investors. We can do market research. We can build out our plan, right? But then a very good follow-up question is, okay, where does the capital come from? Where, I've decided to do it. I have my plan. Where does the capital come from? It's a valid question. The first place that we reached for real estate capital was our retirement accounts. Emily had we both did. We both had a 401k when we worked at GE. Emily was left GE first, so that 401k became available to roll over. They have special custodians out there in the world that allow real estate investing. So we took that 401k, rolled it over into a real estate custodian, and that was our first real estate investment. We bought a flip house in Fort Worth, Texas, right here, with Emily's self-directed IRA retirement account. So that happens to be extremely popular, by the way. I'd say about 30 to 40% of my investors in the apartment world utilize a retirement account. So it's very popular. Underperforming savings accounts. So this would be dead money. So when you put your chart together, which I'm going to encourage you to do, you look for the dead money, right? Where is the money sitting in my checking account or my savings account or somewhere it's just not doing anything? I'm guilty of this too, right? I've got money sitting in dead money zones. We did a lot of comparing between stock market investing, real estate investing. I think a lot of us become comfortable with the paper asset world. It's how a lot of us are brought up to invest, and it's how our parents do it. But I personally don't do any more of it, really. So that I took all my portfolio out of stocks, bonds, mutual funds, moved it right over. Personal home equity. This would probably be the last place I would reach. I say this because, depending on where you live, your house might actually be a decent wealth vehicle, right? I know homes cost money, the maintenance and utilities and things like that. So I never consider it to be a real estate investment, but you just want to be careful before you do this. I've done it a couple times, right? Throughout the past several years, I've taken out just a refinance on the house, and it's done great, right? You take the money out, you make a real estate investment. Almost always, the real estate investment does 2, 3, 4 times better than the interest rate that you're paying on your mortgage. So it just makes a lot of sense to do it. But I would exhaust all the other sources first. And then as far as continually encouraging your portfolio to get the money in the right location, in regards to the plan that we're putting together, every 4 years or so, we need to be, I would say, or in the first 4 years, we need to be kind of a heightened awareness on our P&L. Okay. And I still am. I've been doing real estate investing for 10 plus years. I'm still watching my personal P&L like a hawk, right? But this is where you can really identify some loose change, so to speak, to go invest with. And then after year 4 or 5, it's funny. A lot of your real estate investments are going to start turning over. A lot of them will have doubled in value. And so, you might have invested 30 grand in year 1, and then year 4 rolls around and, the lead investor is sending you a check for $60,000. And so at that point, money starts to find you, right? You start to really build a portfolio where you can reinvest and turn that capital over again to rinse and repeat. So once you have, again, the 10-year plan, putting one piece of real estate in every year, you can do that. You can do that tonight, right? Relatively easy. Put some numbers in there that you're comfortable with. Separate activity is to print out this page and replace the question marks. right? Print out this page and understand on your balance sheet, where is my investable funds? Is it sitting at the bottom? Is it already all the way at the top? This is going to help you identify where your capital is. If you've made the decision to invest in real estate, but you need to get the capital in the right spot, this is going to help you identify where it is, right? And I actually went back today, and when I started this, when I put together my plan, this is where my money was. I've got the amounts. This is Emily and me. I've got the amounts and I've got the percentage. So I had most of my money sitting in safe. And I had some of it sitting in dead. So 3/4 of it sitting in safe and 1/4 of it sitting in dead. But I'm going to be 100% honest with you. The safe money, the 261 grand, it wasn't really that safe because it was, it was sitting in a stock portfolio that I wasn't really, I was just set it and forget it, right? Just kind of let it ride. No control really, just on the roller coaster. So, so that's where we were 10 years ago. And I knew after putting the plan together that I needed to get that money moving in the up direction, right? That is exactly what the plan encourages you to do. Okay. And then, once you get that on paper, you can really amplify your personal and generational wealth plan. This is just a screenshot using the same tool and a lot of the same assumptions, actually, really. I think I just changed a couple numbers here. $300,000 net worth up to $1 million in 10 years. Not bad, right? Not bad. And not a lot of work involved either, right? The return versus effort ratio is significantly high. So, yeah. So you sit and you watch it grow. And every year you recut the plan, right? You realize after the first year, wow, I could probably do more than one per year. That's the first thing you'll realize. You're like, wow, I can't believe I only planned for one per year. Crazy. And then just as a quick reminder, because we talked a lot about active versus passive investing, because after you put the plan together, okay, so you put the plan together, there's the plan, and then you identify where your money's at, and then you understand the execution phase. You're like, okay, I know where the money's at. Now I need to start to move the chess pieces around so I can move up the chain. Then the natural next thing is making the move, right? And if you're going to do it passively, if you're going to be an active investor, I mean, there's still a lot to talk about, but I geared this more towards passive investing. If you're going to make the move, okay, if you got the plan, you need to move the money, let's rock and roll. I just want to leave everybody with this, because if you're going to make the move, you still have, there are passive investor responsibilities. It happens to be the easiest gig on the team because you can sit on the beach and collect the mailbox money, but we've got to choose. And we talked about this a lot on the prior webinars, so apologize to rehash it, but it bears repeating. We need to choose good markets, and good markets are places where people are moving to, businesses are moving to. Thus, real estate is valuable and continuing to appreciate. We need to do our due diligence on the active investor, on the lead sponsor. So if I'm going to invest in an apartment complex with Joe Smith investor, well, then I need to know everything about Joe Smith. I probably want to not invest with him just after I shake his hand, right? There takes time to build relationships, right? So you want to do that due diligence, understand the track record, know who you're doing business with. And then finally, you want to stay active in the space. And what do I mean by that? You want to stay up to date on your portfolio. You want to understand what's going on with the specific investment vehicles that you're investing in. So if, example, multifamily is the future of your portfolio, well, then, you want to make it a habit to stay up to date on things that are related to multifamily apartment investing, right? It's not difficult. You can do it while you sit on the beach in that picture, right? It is possible. But I want to leave everybody with this because, yes, creating the plan and then finding the capital and moving the capital around to move it up the chain is definitely, those are actionable items. And being a passive investor happens to be a very easy role, but it does come with some responsibility. And so I want to make sure this is stated. And hey, if you've got this covered and you start making moves and doing investments, it's a great ride. It's a fantastic ride. So that's it. That's the end of the webinar series. What questions? I did all the talking. What did any questions come up that I can handle?
Hey, Adam, I posted a couple in the chat.
Oh, okay. Let me look. Okay. Okay. Yep. Yep. The 401k real estate investing. So when all those things, Ron, that you listed in the chat, and he asked about 401k, 403b, and Roth. All of those are eligible for the real estate investing custodian. So if you have those with like a broker or with, with a prior company, like brokerage account, those can all be rolled over and they are recognized as legal funds to invest in real estate with the right custodian. As far as the tax implications go, it is seen as a legal rollover. So just like you might, like when I moved away from GE, we were using Fidelity. GE used Fidelity Net Benefits as the custodian for the 401k system. When I went to United Technologies, they used, I think, TD Ameritrade. So I had the option of rolling over my GE 401k from Fidelity to TD Ameritrade. Well, this is the same thing. It's a rollover. So if you wanted to invest in real estate with, say, a 401k or an IRA, you would call up your custodian and say, hey, cut me a rollover check, send it to this address, the other custodian, and then they would do that and it'd be a rollover. So no penalties, no taxes. It's just going from one retirement account to another. Does that answer it, Ron?
Yep, thank you.
Yep. Can you expand on how you plan for tax benefits as part of your 4 to 5 year plan strategy? What does that look like? Yeah. So here's the deal. And I don't know if this is really a best practice or not. This is just the way that we've done it. It happens to be the way a lot of people in the space do it. Your financial planning generally, especially in the early going. So I'm going to say the first 5 years. Your plan is going to be irrespective, and completely ignore tax planning, so to speak, right? And I say that I don't mean to sound cavalier and like we want to ignore it, but in my opinion, it muddies the waters a little bit if you start to put the plan together and say, well, I'm not going to do this in this year because of certain tax reasons and all that. And the reason why is because when it comes to real estate and business in general, so a lot of this applies across the board when you run a business or if you invest in businesses, the tax laws are changing all the time, every year. Every time we go work with our CPA, she's throwing a sheet in front of us and says, oh, here's the 6 changes that they made last year, this year. So if we're making a lot of decisions and investment decisions in real estate based on, whether or not it's going to benefit us from a tax perspective, we might be missing the target. Now, with that said, I know from a high level, for a lot of the reasons we talked about, that multifamily real estate investing and the industrial real estate investing happen to be phenomenal tax shelters, just in general. So from a high level, that becomes part of my plan, right? And I do that instead of, say, other types of investing for tax purposes, no doubt. Like, absolutely. But it never made it necessarily onto my spreadsheet, right? I never said, okay, well, I think I'm going to save about $100,000 this year in taxes or next year, so let's pencil that in there. No, I do, all my earnings, all the balance sheet, net profit calculations before taxes, before interest, all that stuff. So yeah, don't look into it too deep, right? Now, I mentioned, hey, first 5 years, maybe don't, but after you, and I guarantee this will happen for those folks that go down this path. Once you get really involved, right? Say years 5 through 10, and you're doing, let's say you're on your 15th or your 20th real estate investment, then chances are you're going to be making so much money in gains that maybe even some of the tax benefits that come with real estate aren't going to help you anymore. Right. Definitely that definitely happens. Right. It's happened to us. It's happened to a lot of my colleagues. And so what happened at that point, then you start to work, there's these special tax strategy firms out there. And we work with one that looks at your entire portfolio, looks at all the businesses you own, looks at all the real estate you own, all the money you make, et cetera. And they create a personalized tax strategy plan for you, right? Say, hey, you need to invest in this for this reason and this and that. But that is once you start to get really, really involved and are, making so much money hand over fist that no amount of bonus depreciation or real estate tax benefits are going to save you. Good example, a lot of folks in my space over the past several years have had a lot of success. There's a conservation land easement legislation that went through a few years ago that basically said if you invest into a conservation easement, which is like a land investment, special land investment, well, then you can get like 3x your investment in tax savings. There's an incentive the government did several years ago. And yeah, the only people that knew about that were folks working with these special tax firms because they studied all the tax law and stuff like that. So I hope, Ron, that was a very long answer to your question, but I hope that gave some color.
It did. Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions before we wrap up? Well, like Ron mentioned at the beginning of the call, I am definitely available. If this spurred inspiration and you want to get a spreadsheet filled out and you want to look at it together or talk shop, I love this stuff. So don't hesitate to connect, ask questions. Happy to help. Like I said at the beginning of this whole thing, it's just been really good for Emily and I, and I get a lot of just I really enjoy working with folks on kind of just changing the paradigm of their financial future and seeing what they can do to get some generational wealth going. Because it's been great for us and for the folks I've worked with in the past and have reconnected with now, just love to be involved in that and help wherever I can. So feel free to reach out, and everybody have a good night.